Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. And part two, and I know there are a number of members over the other side of the House who say there are no farmers or farm experience over here. We indeed have a lot of practical on-farm experience and have knowledge to ask the experience, of the Minister what this means, particularly in the area of agriculture. Mr Speaker, can I just go back to a point that my colleague Stuart Nash raised, and that is the one of clause 32. And it states here that anything arising, 32(1), and it goes on and says, arising from the workplace are without risks to the health and safety of any person. Now, that's a fairly absolute statement, and I agree with him, and probably members of the other side of the House, who would say that it is almost impossible to eliminate risk. So we have that absolute statement here, but if you go back to part 1, and it's not for me to dwell on part 1, I know we've debated that, but the main purpose of this act is to provide for a balanced framework. And in my view, that balanced word should have been changed to effective or appropriate. If in part 2 we've got an absolute about eliminating risk, then we shouldn't, in part 1, have an implication that, well, we balance that off against other factors like cost or reasonably practicable or whatever you want to put in there, Mr Speaker or Mr Chairman. So I am struggling, and the Minister might understand why we have this fairly absolute objective in clause 32(1), Mr Speaker. I received a text actually while we were debating this bill saying, God, I don't know how you put up with this, going on about these things. People have to understand that every word in the legislation that we pass through this House has a meaning. It's been debated, and it is absolutely essential that we get the words right, because we can guarantee that down the path there'll be some lawyer, for good or bad reason, who will argue the case in a court of law over a word that we have endorsed or tried to change in the House. So, Mr Speaker, we will carry on here. Can I refer to the farming provisions in here and 32(1)(b), and it's been raised by my colleagues before about that the PCBU is conducting a farming business or undertaking duties owed by them, of course, applies only in relation to the farm buildings or any structure in part or immediately surrounding the farm buildings that are necessary for the operation of the buildings you're undertaking. Mr Speaker, one of the things that, and it does go down to say that does not apply in relation to the main dwelling or any other part of the farm unless work has been carried out in that part at the time. And there are many farms that will have stockyards out in far reaches of the farm, and they may have been constructed well or they may not have been. And so the Minister may be able to clarify it. I'm assuming that this provision means that if you're not working in the stockyards, no one's responsible for any danger that may be caused by the design of them or by stock running around that may be held in there. It is a point that does need to be clarified, because it seems as though the onus of responsibility just shifts with the people as they move around the farm, rather than saying that the PCBU is responsible for the wider safety on the whole of the farming operation, Mr Speaker. And so the Minister may explain that. And I go on to another part in part 2 here that refers to, it's been raised before, about penalties, I guess, for non-disclosure. Anyone who's in business today who doesn't understand the implications of notifying accidents and what that might mean to your ACC rating or to a lot of other things around your business would be naive. It is very, very important to notify, but it's also a reality that if you notify every accident in your business, then your ACC rating or a lot of other things may change, and it may affect your business. So while encouraging people to notify, and the bill in fact expects all notification to take place, one of the questions I ask is, are the penalties sufficient? Are the penalties in line with other provisions across the legislation, because, Mr. Chair,
Simon O'Connor.
Mr. Chair,
I move that the question be
Chair,
now put.
I
Mr.
call
Chair.
Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I see there's a number of members on this side of the House keen